welcome to this episode of Act Real Studio Lounge. One thing that people know me and know about the industry is voiceovers, animation, and how big that industry has gotten. Before, you used to be able to be, anyone could be a voiceover artist, and they would work intensely. But as the genre evolved, more and more celebrities, more and more people of note took on those roles. And everyone wants to know, how do you get started? How do you break into that industry? Well, today we're going to find out from one of the most prolific, well-respected, Emmy-nominated, if not granted, writers, directors, composers, and television producers in the business today. And that is my friend, Bill Burnett. Welcome, Bill.
Well, no, thank you, Roz. Thank you. Don't get the idea that I'm going to give anybody any shortcuts of how to become a voiceover actor, though.
Yeah, I know.
That's not my thing.
There's no
I don't.
shortcuts. And I'll know that for a fact because going through this process, there's so much involved, and that's kind of what I wanted to let people like get up close and personal behind the scenes with someone who knows full well how this industry works, and especially this genre. And for those who are interested in creating songs, or who really have great lyrics, or think that they might have a really great germ of an idea that could make a great animated series, Bill Burnett is the person for Actro Studio who is going to be spearheading this incredible skill set for our platform. And we wanted to dive a little bit into that today, if you're cool with that. So
Am I cool with it?
Yeah. All right, so I wanted to give a little background, if you can tell us really how you got started. Like, how did you get involved in the space of animation?
Well, it's an interesting story, Roz. I started out being a starving artist. I wanted most to be a recording artist, to write songs and be a kind of a Paul Simon or a Joni Mitchell kind of a person, and I did all sorts of different artistic things through my 20s, and was basically the starving part of it. I aced. I was definitely starving, but I wasn't. And I did a bunch of cool things, but it wasn't really until I got into advertising that I started to get somewhere in life. And if you had asked me as a young man, do you want to be in advertising? I would have been like, oh, no, no, not advertising. As that old joke about there's this guy's family, and one guy's a drunk, and one guy's a thief, and one guy's a murderer, and one guy's in advertising, and he says, don't talk about the guy in advertising. But I when I finally did get into advertising at Gray Advertising in New York, I discovered that I was quite good at it and enjoyed it. It let me use all of my different talents, and of being a writer. I was a story writer. I was a musician. I was a composer. I was a persuasive person, and I enjoyed doing advertising, and I became the creative director of MTV Network's advertising agency, and did a lot of really cool stuff in there.
I want to dive into that for just a moment, because that is a huge deal, a big deal, Bill, that you were it's a big deal, Bill, like
It is.
Bill.
I agree.
Right?
I totally
Because
agree.
MTV was at the forefront of every single thing that was part of our culture. I mean, one of my first jobs was at MTV, and I know that it was like a cult following. So for you to be the creative director at such a forward, it's kind of like now, like you were at the beginning of all the things that were next. How did you get involved? How did you get to MTV from advertising? Was it a connection, or did you answer an ad? Did you have a headhunter? Like, how did that happen to get in such a big up and coming
I was working
spot.
at Gray Advertising, which is a more regular type advertising agency.
Hmm.
It was sort of my apprenticeship, and a friend of mine knew Fred Seibert and Alan Goodman, and they had been among the people who created MTV, and were now starting their own company called Fred/Allen, and it was going to be titularly it was going to be an advertising agency, but actually it was more like a kind of a think tank for MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, Comedy Central, ultimately. And they needed somebody who knew something about advertising, because they didn't really know anything about advertising. What they knew about was how to create and nurture cable TV networks, which in those days were a new concept. The idea of a cable TV, pick up the phone and talk to your cable operator and say, "I want my MTV." That was them. And so uh, they hired me because I was a young and a rapscallion. I was hungry and willing to do crazy things, and we did do crazy things. And in fact, I created the name Comedy Central and wrote the original positioning paper for Comedy Central, and it's gone on to be a hugely successful network, and following a lot of the things that we laid out for them back then in the early 90s when it was so my clients were MTV, Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, VH1, and Comedy Central, and a few other little things scattered in there, uh, like Sassy magazine, Sassy, and
Sassy.
and
That's
Fred Seibert
incredible.
went on to become the president of Hanna-Barbera, which is a really strange, I mean, he had no particular relationship to animation, but he had made a connection with Scott Sassa, not Sassy, but Sassa. Scott Sassa was the head of Turner, of that division of Turner Broadcasting, which had purchased everything involved with MGM, which was Hanna-Barbera was part of it. And so Fred was made the president of Hanna-Barbera, and he brought me out to LA to be his creative director at Hanna-Barbera. And my only caveat for accepting that job was I want to get involved with making cartoons. I really, really would like to make cartoons. I love cartoons. I had a
Where
big
that
cartoon
passion
collection.
come from when you were at Hanna Barbera? And let's talk about that because I mean Hanna Barbera, basically growing up was Nickelodeon. It was the forebearer of that entire genre. You had, you know, things that we still talk about today, like the Flintstones, right, and Scooby Doo,
Jetsons and Top
Jetsons.
Cat, and yeah, they were big. They were huge. A
I
lot.
mean, that
You
was
could
so.
go on for a long time
Yeah.
listing off the big hits that they had.
I
Sure.
remember growing up watching the Jetsons, always wishing I was like, one day I'm going to be able to talk to somebody on the phone and I'm going to be able to see them. And here we are.
Yeah, here we are,
So,
kind
and
of, sort of there.
right, and I want to talk a little bit about that. I mean, we always talk about networking and connections and really showing up. What was it you? I mean, you said it was because you were hungry and you were ready, but you also had a creative spirit and you had this willingness to try new things and be adventurous and with the music. So, could you give me a little background of how that love for that genre impacted you to want to create animation, and then how that played into some of your other talents like on Broadway and creating some of the songs and scores that you did for like Curious George and some of these other really huge Cow and Chicken, hugely successful um, platforms and products.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, if you look at the history of cartoons, they were intended in the earliest days to be a a a way to set images to music. You know, they were called silly symphonies and Looney Tunes and all, you know, all of the Fleischer cartoons had people like Cab Calloway and you know, Duke Ellington and people like that, and they were little pieces of music with visuals, and you know, there was so much music. So many of us, in watching like the Bugs Bunny cartoons and stuff, became familiar with the concept of opera through those things. You know, that's how most people of our age group, at least, knows opera. Surely the people who were at Termite Terrace, which is the nickname of the Warner Brothers studio, knew must have had opera as part of their um, you know, their upbringing, because they kept turning to opera over and over again, and songs in general, and
I would say
you know,
also in addition to opera is classical, right? So like Tchaikovsky and
classical,
Mozart, like these were like you hear these songs and they're the scores to the cartoons. Like I hear classical music now and I'm like, oh my goodness, that was from Bugs Bunny, or that was
yeah,
from Tom and Jerry.
yeah. So you know, I mean, Bill Hanna, for instance, uh, when he was doing Tom and Jerry, and also when he did cartoons for Hanna Barbera, he he would set the storyboard on top of sheet music and time the his cartoons to the music, you know, and that's why those cartoons are just so perfectly put together, and just grab you and hit your funny bone, you know, so perfectly, because he was working it out musically. And
That's
so,
a
you know,
gift that
my
you have too.
musicality,
Yeah, your music gifts are prolific, and let's get into that.
well, my musicality went right into this attitude of cartoons. Um, Interestingly, by the time I started making cartoons, the skill of knowing how to hook music up exactly to cartoons had sort of atrophied. Hardly anyone was doing that. So the older directors were the ones who knew how to do what I was asking them to do. Uh, you know, people like Jaime Diaz, you know, was a great director. One of, you know, one of, he could have been one of the all nine old men of Disney. He was trained by those people, and he was as good as those people. And and so I got into the first show that I worked on was Cow and Chicken, and you can see right back here, the ugliest weenie was one of my big numbers. Um, I wrote that it was an actual musical uh, that you can find online, and you know, it was a two-part show. I wrote a lot of songs for Cow and Chicken, and I was the head writer of Cow and Chicken, and and then when Ted Turner sold his company to Warner Brothers, and they were going to come in and take over, Fred moved over to Nickelodeon, and we all moved over to Nickelodeon, and I did 10 shows for Nickelodeon, um, one of which was Chalk Zone, and
Heard
of
of
course
that
every
one.
episode
Heard of that.
yeah, that's my big claim to fame, and I and yours too. You know, one of
Absolutely.
your claims to fame, because you were Queen Rapshiba in Chalk Zone,
What
and
was it that you decided? Because I didn't sing, and that was the biggest thing for me. I was like, Bill, I don't sing, and a lot of things happen where you just have to go with it, and you had something that you felt I brought to the table that I didn't even see. And I think that's what's so beautiful about you, how you're able to work with artists and actors. You're able to find that special niche and just hone in on it and make them feel really powerful in it.
well, you know, Roz, if you had literally not been able to sing, in fact, I would have stopped making you sing. But you were very good at it. You had a feel for it and rhythm and everything. I mean, and it was kind of amusing to have somebody who wasn't a natural singer be the singer person in Chalk Zone, and it was fun. It was funny, and you were also very funny at delivering lines. So
I don't
it
know
was
what you
great.
talking about. What?
Yeah,
And you
and
always go ahead.
yeah, no, go ahead.
So I was going to say, and to that note, you also work with, I mean, when I think about you working with people who can sing, we're talking about one of your besties that you started with back in the day, Patti Lupone.
Well, I wouldn't quite call her a bestie, but I did work with Patti Lupone very early. She had just done Evita, and she was a big deal, and we got her to be in our show called uh, uh, Soap Opera, uh, a soap operetta, uh, and she was the female lead of that. It was a PBS series that we were doing, and I've also done songs for Bette Midler and Tim Curry. I always list Tim Curry because Rocky Horror Picture Show, hip guy. He sang in Chalk Zone's episode, the Halloween episode, and uh,
Those are
it was
huge.
great.
I mean, you've worked with some really, really hugely talented people along the way, and you
Really.
evolve so much in your own talents. I want to talk about your music right now, and are you currently in this band, right? Talk about your the
Well, I'm doing two things. I'm doing Bill Burnett as Bill Burnett, and I'm also doing a Leonard Cohen tribute thing where I sing, the sort of entire oeuvre of Leonard Cohen, and it's going very well. People are enjoying it, so you know, and
so, and I
sold out
think that's
shows.
super fun. And one of the things also about how you were able to connect the dots to, this is my first time ever hearing that cartoons were basically pictures put to songs. Like, I think that's really interesting, and how that still plays out today. What's the techniques that people are using today? Because there's so many different, they can license music, they can do riffs, they can buy tracks. Are you still composing everything from scratch with your new pieces that you're working on? Is that still something that you love to do? Or have you evolved? Has it evolved, that space?
I am. I don't know what. I don't know what the happening cartoons of today are doing in terms of where they're getting their music from, but but I still believe in creating things from scratch, and you know I've never used any kind of sample or certainly not any kind of loop, uh, not knowingly at least. Um, uh, I don't think that we had two major composers for Chalk Zone, Guy Moon and Jeff Levin, and they did everything. They created everything from original. So which, and I created a lot of all of the songs for those shows.
I
You
mean,
know,
that's a huge library. And
Yes.
that's what's such a gift about where we are today, and being able to have you share all that knowledge on the platform with Acro Studio. And I wanted to get a little bit about kind of the process of how you're able to help people uncover those gifts when we start talking about animation, the idea. Like, could you give me an idea of how you approach attacking what would be good? Like, how do you know if it's any good? And how do you start putting yourself out there? And how would you help the students? Like, what are the things that you think are most important that people need to know to kind of understand this genre and how they might use their gifts and talents in a variety of ways, be it voice, music, because music changes moods, it changes everything. You know, music makes the magic with what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, there are three or maybe four basic segments of the audience for animation. There's preschool, and that has a certain approach to putting stories together and what you can and can't do and say.
Mm.
And then there's the classic um, kid demo, which is usually uh, talked about as being 6 to 11, but I don't think it's really been 6 to 11 for quite a long time, and it's probably 6 to like 16 or 17, and then there's the uh, more adult type cartoons like BoJack Horseman, and then of course there's feature animation, which is intended to be for a general audience, um, and a lot of those things. I mean, if you look at all the Pixar stuff, clearly the way they develop shows is by thinking of adult problems, like the Expendables, or people who have gotten too old and fat to do what they used to do, and so they're put out to pasture, but now they're brought back. Or Finding Nemo, he brings his family to what he thinks is going to be a wonderful place for them to live on the coral reef, and then they get attacked by predators, and he loses his entire family, including his wife, except for the one child. So he becomes overly protective of that one child, which is why Nemo runs away and has to be found. And
It's so
Up,
incredible how
and
these really adult, serious themes make their way into these animated classics. Even stuff like, you know, um, Beauty and the Beast,
the
or
Beast. Yeah,
you
indeed.
know, even my
Yeah,
favorite, like I love Lion King, but they really get dark. Even Bambi got dark, and you think
absolutely.
about but you don't. It's like extended reality. You're able to have empathy. I love what animation does is it teaches us empathy. It teaches us how to process really difficult things in a
Right.
more cohesive and, I guess, palatable manner that you can actually absorb the information and not be overwhelmed by it. And even the cartoons, there's so much violence. You think about the things that we grew up with and the stuff that we would see in all these, and it's evolved so much. Do you think that that was intentional, or what do you think? Is that what the genre was always supposed to be?
Violent?
Well,
Is that
like you
what you're
said,
asking?
taking adult themes and making them for a younger audience, difficult situations, and making sense of them, or giving them a context of a framework of how to deal with it.
I think that the earliest cartoons in like the 1920s and 1930s were vaudeville animated. They were, if you look at them, most of them, like if you think about Daffy Duck and Bugs Bunny, that's like a vaudeville team. And they're almost standing there on a stage, you know doing that's rabbit season, it's duck season, it's you know it's like a Laurel and Hardy or a Abbott and Costello, um, and this whole thing of uh, uh, the people chasing each other around. It's basically set up a situation in which people chase each other around, or characters chase each other around. Um,
And there's a
and
bad guy and the good guy, the white hat and the black hat. When you think, and
mhm.
even like Popeye, I used to think about Popeye, how we've always needed superheroes, but his was spinach, right? And how you had that go-to thing.
Yeah, Yeah. So, but then I think in the 60s, the main source of inspiration were TV shows. The Flintstones was the Honeymooners, you
Yes.
know, and the Jetsons was the Flintstones set in the
In the
future.
future.
I mean, it was, and so I think that's what Bill and Joe got their inspiration from, and then as we came up into uh, more modern times, it was sitcoms. You know, The Simpsons is a sitcom, just doing things that are a little stranger and a little more raunchy than you would have in a regular sitcom. And then in modern times, we've gotten into surrealism, you know, uh, and some of the stuff has gotten really, really dark. Um, but
Yeah.
but anyway, I think in answer to what the audience here is who would like some guidance is I think you have to figure out what part um, of the animation world you feel you could fit into, and what part of the animation world does your idea fit into, and then you need to figure out a way to express your idea in a way that other people will go, oh yeah, I get it, I see how this works, and I see what's funny about it, and who the characters are, and that's when, time and again, when I'm approached by people who don't know um, how to develop their idea and how to present it. It's that what they have something that's very, very clear in their own minds as being, this is a great idea. I love this idea, and they don't realize that it's not clear to the person that they're pitching it to. That they're it's not. You need to really sort of blow the cobwebs away and make it all very, very clear. And I can help um, with doing that for sure.
Is
It's
that
it's a
developing story? Like, is it storytelling? Is it situational? Is it focus driven, like purpose driven? Like, how do you, as an artist, figuring out your way, decide which route to take first? I guess.
well, it's always storytelling and it's always character. I mean, you don't, for the most part, you don't get people falling in love with an idea or a concept. You get people falling in love with characters. So if you have a great concept, you need to figure out a character that you can weave that into that concept. People don't fall in love. Like what's Bugs Bunny was able to fit himself into every concept. He could be uh, the guy who was driving a train, or in one show he would be living in an apartment building, and in another show he'd be a rabbit living out in the woods. You
Yep.
know, and so they used him as like an actor. You know, the same way they
Yeah.
used Cary Grant as an actor. He could be the guy in North by Northwest who's very sophisticated, or he could be, you know, a guy down on his luck in another movie. So
Do you think that
but
the audiences today give that kind of liberty to these characters? Because Bug Bunny was so special and he had different incarnations of who he is. But I think now, like Bart Simpson is Bart Simpson, right? Or
that's true.
who, they're so much more interested in niche and putting you in a box on some level, and then that's how that person plays out. If he's irreverent all the time. If she's a smart, snickery, cantankerous person, that's how she is. But with,
Well, Bart Simpson is a character in a sitcom. You
yes,
know, so you don't have George Costanza being different in from show to show. He's George Costanza, and things happen, and he responds as George Costanza or Jerry Seinfeld or Elaine.
right.
Um,
So the
um,
difference between
so that
like Bugs Bunny and the Simpsons is a sitcom, you said, but Bugs Bunny would be more of a.
I think that the reference point for the termite terrace people was vaudeville. You
Vaudeville.
know, it was a couple of people, you know, maybe four people in the case of the Marx Brothers, going out on stage and doing something crazy and silly that made audiences laugh, you know.
So
And
we don't have a lot of that today. Who would you think are the modern day vaudeville talents, if any, that you would like to work with, for example? Like these guys have really great timing and they're really fun, or
well, I don't know, the show that jumps to mind that is carrying on the tradition of vaudeville is Saturday Night Live. You know, all the stand-up comics tend to be more people observing things, you know, and saying funny things about what life is about, you know, and even getting into pretty heavy philosophy, you know.
and that's come under fire quite a lot these days. So, moving forward and kind of wrapping this up, like the new environment of storytelling, animation, comedy, where they converge, seems to be a thick soup that you kind of have
A
to.
thick soup.
I call it a thick soup. Like, it's
Yeah.
got a lot in it. It's got a lot of pieces in it, and there's no,
It's
it's
a
like
gumbo.
a gumbo. Yeah, I feel like it's a thick, rich gumbo. And what I'm
Yeah.
excited about is someone with your background and passion and incredible talent being able to help people navigate this new landscape and get their voices heard, but really be able to make an impact on the culture to help
Mm.
and to heal and to bring laughter and some really good fun music, I think, is what I'm excited about you doing with us.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it right now. Sign up.
Yeah.
Let's get it. Bill, you're awesome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to have been able to talk to you today. And I'm really, really excited to share you with the actual studio community and the world. So
All
what's
right.
next? So tell me about what you want to say to those who are interested in working in this space and what you want to offer. Because I know you know directing, you know every side of it. So just give them a little bit of a quick sizzle of what you'd like to share and what they might be able to learn about in this genre.
I can be an experienced. Let me start this. A receiver of your ideas. I can be a receiver of your ideas and speak back to you what is working and what isn't working and help you make it clear. You know, the idea will stand on its own one way or another. I mean, it will be accepted or rejected, but not because of lack of clarity. And that's what I think is the biggest problem with people. When people come to me seeking help, uh, and they send me their material, I help them by saying, I don't understand what you're going for here. Let's make it work so that I understand it. And if once I understand it, I think you can make other people understand it.
True collaboration with a genius is always welcome. You're awesome. I love you. We're good.
Okay,
I'm going
we
to see you
done?
soon. That's it.